Okay, here we go. So I want to call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so a couple of announcements tonight. We understand that we may have some first-time attendees this evening and would like to review the standard school board meeting process. At the start of the meeting, members from the public may comment on agenda items only. The school board will move through the regular board meeting, then at the end, when prompted, there is time for public comment. This meeting is being videotaped to be broadcast on community cable channels and online. Individuals attending this meeting virtually and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania's Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who do speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board raise their hand electronically, and when prompted, state their name and complete address. Please also spell your last name. Members of the audience are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes to allow time for all those who wish to speak to the board. And the board president may ask an individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. So that's one announcement. Another would be that it should be noted that we held a virtual executive session tonight at 6:30 p.m. just prior to this virtual board meeting to discuss personnel. Do we have anything from our student reps?
No, we do not.
Okay. All right, public to be heard on agenda items only.
Do we need to explain how people raise their hand because they might not be familiar?
So at the bottom of the screen, Bob, if you could just correct me if I'm wrong, there is a button where a hand can be raised, or where would they find that?
Correct. On the bottom of the screen, they should see the 3 dots. They can raise their hand. Currently, there's 124 attendees, and no one has their hand raised.
Okay. All right. So before we have Mr. Fink do
I'm sorry. Someone just raised their hand.
Oh, okay.
Joseph Salazzo. Joseph, you may now speak, sir.
So the school budget's on the agenda, so we should be addressing that now at the beginning.
I'm sorry, Joseph, could you please state your name, address, and also spell your last name? And I for one, am having a little bit of trouble hearing you.
Joseph Salazzo, Sollazzo. It's 44 Woodley Drive. My question is, the school board budget's on the agenda. Is the public should now or at the close of the meeting?
Comment now.
Mr. Fitzgerald, I believe he can make a comment related to that now. Yes.
Oh, my comment is that I think on the agenda is Mr. Fink is doing a presentation. It might be more beneficial for him to complete that and then open it up to the public to address.
And there will be a comment at the very end of an opportunity at the very end of the meeting for public comment, but not directly after Mr. Fink's presentation.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, so before we have Mr. Fink do his presentation, I'm going to ask Mr. DeBello to do the report on the Special Finance Committee meeting because it is all interrelated, interconnected to our discussion here tonight. Mr. DeBello?
Okay. So as the board recalls, and maybe some of the public that was on the meeting last week, we had a finance meeting Thursday night, a special finance meeting. The primary focus of that finance meeting, or the entire focus of that finance meeting, was to continue to work on the budget, going through looking at potential increases in lost revenues, which we did a whole presentation last week on what would cause those lost revenues. And also looking at the expenses that are growing within the district, with we also, through the direction of the board last week, wanted to get from administration what possible reductions could be made in the budget. Administration came back with somewhere, I don't remember the exact number, but I'll say somewhere close to $9 million in possible reductions to the budget. That was presented Thursday night during the finance meeting to the finance committee, as well as I believe all board members were in attendance. So the goal of the meeting was to go through those reductions and understand if we accepted a reduction, we wanted to see what the impact was not only this year with the budget, but also what next year could look like as well. Because when doing school budgeting, as we discussed many times, it's not as simple as take it away and just add it back next year. It's a lot more complex than that. So that anything we eliminate or reduce this year, there will be a direct financial impact next year on next year's budget. So we went through each of those possible recommendations. Unfortunately, none of the recommendations that were presented by administration are palatable. It's a very tough decision as far as what we're confronted with. There is no wasteful spending in the district. We run a very tight budget, and we're very proud of our ability to be fiscally responsible. But we all know that we're dealing with an unprecedented time right now with what's going on. So we went through each of those. We got input or comment from the board, and based on that comment and all that, the finance committee put forward some recommendations for possible reductions. So far, nothing has been accepted. Nothing has been approved. These are just, again, they're just recommendations. There's a lot of work that's going on related to this budget. It's a very tough decisions that have to be made. So which brings us to this evening where we left off was Jim Fink, our CFO, was showing the impacts and to the budget, both for this year and next year. And the board said we wanted to pick that conversation up this evening as you know, just to understand because it was getting late into the evening, and the board wanted to understand more or less some of the things that were recommended, what the impact looks like next year. And so with that, and Jim, I think I covered pretty much finance committee meeting, committee members. If there's anything I missed, please feel free to jump in. But I think where we're at right now is turning it over to Mr. Fink to go over opening up the budget workbook and continue on where we're at.
Okay, if there is no other comment, then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hang on one second while I remember how to do that. Hang on. And if you guys could just tell me that you can see what I'm seeing. Mr. DeBello, yes?
Yes.
Yes, we're good, Jim.
That did not sound like Mr. DeBello, but I'll take it. So
Sorry, I was on mute.
that's all right. So I
You
kind
make
of
it a little bit bigger.
a little bigger, sure. Is that am I getting better? Better?
Yes.
Is that
Yeah.
good?
That's good, Jim.
You see good? All right, good. Sorry about that. Just different size screens make it all come up a little bit different. So to go further down the road that Mr. DeBello was explaining, we did present changes to the budget as it has gone through its renditions since February. We did that last week at the board work session on Monday, and coming out of that, the board recommended an additional finance committee meeting, which we held on Thursday, at which time, of course, the board also directed Dr. Gooden to develop some scenarios where we might be able to, I guess, remove things from the budget, for lack of a better term. In that meeting, we discussed a number of different scenarios. I'm going to kind of roll through them and talk about the ones at least that the committee had gotten input from the rest of the board as well that was on the call, ones that they recommended looking at to see what the impact to the budget model would be. So I'm going to take it from there, and I'm going to kind of talk briefly about each one of these areas. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail, but they were, we had a list of new hires that the district deems critical to the success of the district. Those are included in this slide here, or in this screen here. The committee, along with the input from the rest of the board, decided that this group in yellow could be removed, and to see what that looks like. So that's where we're at this point. We looked at retirements and whether or not retirements should be replaced. The board decided they would like to keep those positions in and replace them, since the need had been demonstrated years ago for these positions. We looked at the eliminating of any salary increases for the non-teacher staff. That would be these groups here. These are the percentages that are included in the budget currently. The board and the committee decided to not touch that at this time. We looked at potential program eliminations or cuts. The strings program, again, decided not to make a move. We looked at extracurriculars, again, decided not to make a move. School police reduction in the force, we decided not to make a move. The instructional coaches also decided not to make a move. I don't know, Tom, I don't know how much detail you want me to go into any of these items, but if you need me to go into more, I'm happy to do so.
No, I mean, you're so far, I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, recommendation is to bring this forward to the board, full board. I mean, because we have to vote on things officially at some point in the near future.
Correct. Okay, so then I'll just press on in the same manner. We looked at the potential of increasing class sizes up to, in the elementaries, from their current status to up to 28. What the impact of that would be. Decided not to make a move on that. We talked about potentially deferring our transfer of capital project funds. We had in here $1 million, I think it was $1,048,000 is where we started on this number. We decided that we would potentially do 500,000. So we took a look at what that looked like. The curriculum budget, again, the same type of thing, which is a deferral of funds for the future purchases of curriculum. We decided to put a deferral on that to the tune of about $487,000. And then finally, we looked at the potential of doing a similar thing with the IT or IT infrastructure, in which the board decided not the right time to do that, at least at this point. So we took those amounts into account. It totaled up to about 1.1 million or so, somewhere in that neighborhood. And as I move over to this slide, I'm hoping that everyone can see that this is the column that I'm focused on for this coming year. We were sitting at a deficit of about $4.7 million. Those changes overall bring it down to about almost $3.6 million, and down from a 4.3% in potential tax change to a 3.2% potential tax change. What it also did, which is important to look at, is to look at this column here, because this is the following year as we press forward, because the changes, as I mentioned in the previous slide, are mainly deferrals. We still would have to catch up on some of those in the coming years. And the impact there was, I look at this number down here, which is the potential tax impact to that. We started before those changes at about 4.26%, going in just because of the typical year-over-year growth. And that, of course, got bumped up to 5.6, because essentially what you don't do this year, you do in the following year or the coming years. That's where we stand as of right now with, and we're looking for further direction from the board as to what you would like to do and where you'd like us to go from here.
Jim, one of the things that we should also think seriously about from the board perspective is that we need to plan some type of virtual town hall meeting or something like that to actually explain the details, really dive in with something similar to what we did back in 2010 when we were faced with a similar situation where we really dove into, you know, the budgeting of the district and really showing where, you know, the numbers and going over and communicating outward to the community so they truly see and understand what we're confronted with.
I support that, Mr. DeBello. I think it will give, you know, greater detail to the community. And as you said, they can see exactly what we're dealing with. Everything's transparent. It's in black and white, and they can see what the impacts are one way or the other.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And they need to know what the cost, the actual cost of reducing this what costs to the districts occur in the long-term effect it has.
I agree with that also. I think it's, I think we should do that. I'll leave my statement with that.
How does the rest of the board feel?
I agree.
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 Thank you.
So with regard to the town hall, that's a logistics, set it up, and I really look forward to conversations. I think that in the past few weeks, we've had a lot of conversations, and I think we're moving in the right direction. I do recognize there's a timeline associated with this process, but you know, I really look forward to continuing to explore and do it in a collaborative manner, sort of how we can lower the tax burden for this particular year. So I do appreciate the continued investment of time to my colleagues on the board and also administration to go through and sort of sharpen the pencil on all of the conversations. So I look forward to continuing it.
Well, I guess from a board perspective, we could end it here, or is there anything that we want to further discuss this evening related to anything that was on the list of recommendations? Because we are unfortunately, we are in a timeline which we have no control over. It's a state regulated timeline that the state has not, as of now, as of yet, have made any changes to those timelines that school districts are required to follow. So for instance, one of the things that I look at is that we were discussing, and that I mentioned last week, was that freezing all new hires. Is that something that the board wants to have further conversation regards this evening? I'm just trying to figure out where we want to go with this.
Yeah, I think that's a worthy topic for discussion, Mr. DeBello.
I would agree, and I would say that perhaps we just look at this as a delay of these positions for 1 year, a delay of a number of items for 1 year. Not that we necessarily are 100% required to make up all of it in the next year, but that we pick up this year and move it forward. Meaning that we don't do these new hires at this time. At least I think there should be discussion around that.
I want to
So-
clarify, are we talking about new hires? Or are we talking about replacing the retirees? Because I see them as two different categories.
I believe at this point, we're just talking new hires.
So, Mr. DeBello, if I understand correctly, where we are right now is, with these proposed items and a little further down on the agenda, there will be a vote as to whether or not to publish this preliminary budget. But in the meantime, I think as a board, all really feel that we want to continue to find ways to minimize the impact from a tax perspective on our community. I am very concerned with our starting point for next year as well, because kicking the can down the road, it could come back to bite us. So I do want to be mindful of that. And as we continue to look at things like these new hires and positions and really work with administration and have administration continue and doing the awesome job they've been doing to look for other opportunities. But I think that's kind of the direction we're going in at this point, is to eventually later in the meeting accept this preliminary, but then continue to work through those reductions and provide some additional guidance to administration in terms of where to focus. Is that accurate? Is that a summary of where we are?
Well, is Mark Fitzgerald on the phone, on the call? Is he?
Somewhere.
Mark, you here?
I am here. I am here. Can you
Mark,
hear me?
could you, thank you. Could you explain the process as far as if we approve the preliminary advertising budget this evening, we still over the next few weeks can continue to reduce or make changes to the budget without jeopardizing our timelines? Could you explain that, please?
Absolutely. Under the school code, section 687, you are simply required to approve a proposed final budget 30 days prior to adopting a final budget. Springford has adopted a timeline procedure that frankly gives you effectively double the amount of time at this point. And during this time period, up till June 30th, which is your deadline to approve a budget, you can whittle down the budget from an expenditures perspective, what you would expect in terms of the millage rate. You have the freedom to do anything you need to do in order to bring in a budget that can be approved by a majority of the board. All you're doing this evening is approving a process that will allow something to be posted and reviewed by the public.
Mark, quick question on that. If we advertise or put a budget up for 30 days and during that process, we have reductions or we make changes to that budget, are we allowed to repost the revised version, or do we have to stay with the one that's out there?
I don't think there is any prohibition from posting additional documentation. You will have fulfilled your statutory requirement by posting this budget here. And if you want to post additional documents for the public to see, that's going to be at the discretion of the board and certainly would be something that you could do.
Okay, got it.
Just to clarify a little bit, because I was looking at the dates and such. Mark, if we took our time with this, because it is such a monumental task, and we didn't vote to publish it until, say, the work session in May. If we called for a vote at that work session in May, would we still be within the stated or the mandated timeline to then vote for the approval at the June board meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if this was May today, I'd be concerned about your timeline. But you could theoretically approve the proposed final budget likely at your work session in May, which I think is roughly around May 18th or so, and then be able to, in a timely fashion, approve your budget at your regular second meeting in June, which I think is roughly around June 22nd or so, just my recollection of the calendar. Obviously, that the downside of it is just simply approving a budget late to get out then tax duplicates. But other than that, you would still be well within your timeline if you held off until your work session in May.
I would recommend against that. The reason why we backed it up, and that's why I wanted Mark to explain the process. The reason why we backed it up is because we don't want to be in a situation, because that 30-day, that time is very specific. So we could effectively do everything we want to do, put a preliminary post, whatever you want to call it, post it, advertise, or whatever, and we could continue to put things out for the public over the next couple weeks. But we built in the flexibility so that don't become in a desperate situation where we have to have approval by a certain date, because by June 30th, it absolutely has to be done. And on the flip side, we backed it up because of all the tax bills and everything that has to be printed and processed and everything else. So I'm not saying that I agree with this budget. I think that we have work that we could still do on it. I think we have some ideas that we want to continue to work through, but that doesn't preclude us from meeting one of the state requirements to post something. And literally, if we post this up there, would actually help us as well as when we have this virtual town hall meeting, whatever that turns out to be. But this is kind of already floated out there so people can see what we're dealing with. So I really, really would recommend that we don't cut our time short. That's just my opinion.
So the advantage is we're getting the information out. We don't have to agree with this tonight of what's here. We get the information out. We meet the state mandate in terms of time well in advance of that. And then we take our time, the rest of this period, to really go through this line item by line item and try to make things work a little bit better. Is that my understanding?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
We could continue to work. We could continue to work extremely hard on what we're trying to achieve as an end goal. Our end goal is to get to zero as close as possible, or get to zero, whatever that may be. We continue to do that work, but there's nothing that prevents us, and it really would put us in a disadvantage to not get something up just to meet that 30-day requirement. It's just one of those check the box state things. Right, Mark Fitzgerald? If I'm saying anything that's inaccurate, please.
I think that's a fair way of describing it. You are checking a box along the budget process tonight. That's simply what you're doing.
And we're not approving this budget in any way, shape, or form that's here. We are merely checking a box, meeting a state mandate, and we're going to continue to work on it. Correct?
Correct.
Colleen, the action that we are approving is publishing what we currently have. That's it. That would be the vote tonight, is we're voting on publishing what we currently have. We are not agreeing to it, and we are continuing to work through it to get it to where it meets the needs of our community and our students.
Correct. And I think Colleen was what Colleen was pointing out, and we have to make sure that everyone is totally understanding that's dialed in from the public. We're not approving anything this evening. This is just a draft that we're putting up because we have to meet a state requirement to publish something. And this is where we are at this point in time. And we will continue to work on making changes to the budget, because nothing is approved until that final vote that will either occur sometime in May or sometime early June or whatever it may be. And that's when the board at that point will take an official vote on the budget.
And this will be a useful tool then for that virtual town hall meeting. This would actually give the community something to see in writing, which is a lot easier to kind of digest than it is to just hear about it.
Correct. And I think that virtual town hall meeting is important because over the weekend, I decided to post something up on Facebook. It wasn't widespread, but I got a lot of feedback from people that connected in some form, and it was very interesting to see the feedback, and that's why we need to make sure that we go to, as many people as we possibly can, and unfortunately we can't do it live in person, so we have to do virtual.
And we can't reach everyone on Facebook. So it is important to have that virtual town meeting, that another outlet to try to give people the opportunity to voice their opinions one way or the other. So I would agree with that. Okay, is there any more conversation from the board about this, or discussion from the board about the presentation?
So we're not doing anything to this budget this evening then?
I think everybody understands that.
Okay. No, I just want to make sure, because tomorrow I don't want to hear, oh, we should have did this or we should have did that. This is the board's opportunity to make any change as of right now.
I'm going to reiterate that we should do a hiring freeze on the new hires. Throwing it out there for discussion.
Duly noted.
Okay, so I guess then the directive from the board is to have another finance committee meeting in the near future. Is that what I'm hearing?
I support that.
Okay, so I know that Jim and his staff in the next day or two will be working on getting some information, and so we'll be carrying that forward. But I did ask, Jim, did you get any updated information related to that you may want to talk about real quick, as far as what we're seeing, the impacts of the recent unemployment, or how we're analyzing numbers, or what we're looking at?
Yeah, we looked at we looked at data from the feds. We looked at data from the county. We looked at data from from Pennsylvania. The data that I got regarding claims and such over the past few weeks, very difficult to get through. In fact, when I looked through some of the reports, in fact, Beth was instrumental at getting some of that for me today. Thank you very much, Beth. Some of the reports were actually conflicting each other. And one of the reports, which was interesting to me, even said, hey, don't use this if you're using any of the other reports. So it was quite confusing. So the best thing I think that I could really do was to look at what the impacts or the unemployment situation was over the past 10 years, and try to extrapolate to some sort of trend analysis. So I did do a little digging. Let me see if I can call it up here. Sorry, nobody wants to see that.
That's okay.
It was fun though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little entertainment, I suppose. So I went through data. I don't know, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Big enough? Is that big enough?
Yeah.
Yes.
Menzelman. I can get a little bit more, but so I went through, unemployment data. This was back in 2010, and then all the way up through 2020, and then the couple of months that we're at right now. And just to kind of look at the trends, this of course was back in 2010 was one of the bigger or the higher levels of unemployment from the financial crisis, from 07, 08. As it's a trailing factor there. And you can see from this that even back then, when the U.S. unemployment rate was 9.3, Montco, our county, was 7.3. So I found that kind of interesting, that we were a little bit lower than the federal average, and we were even lower than the state average. And as you proceed outward in the years, you can see as the U.S. and the PA rates go down, ours in the county do as well. Of course, they do at a slower rate because there's just not as much room to move. And one thing that I found interesting, of course, was that the county was always lower than the state average, which is a great thing when you look at it that way. So, but we did level off with, pretty much with the federal numbers at the end. So in February, the Fed had 3.2% unemployment, so did we. Our state had 4.7, which was great, that we were lower than that, but we did end up evening off. So I went through and I just try to extrapolate some numbers. I went through and looked at, well, what percent of Montgomery County is compared to the state. So if I look at, compare these two numbers, I can see that Montgomery County at the time of, one of the highest points of unemployment back in 2010, we were about 78.5% of what the federal unemployment rate was as reported. And you can see that tended to, to carry all the way through until we got to the more recent years, and then it kind of it fluctuated around as would be expected as well. So what I tried to do is I tried to say, well, if that's true, back in 2010 when we were at one of our, our highest points of unemployment in the previous crisis, and if we held the same percentage that we did back then of the federal, I looked back to see that Reuters over here, Reuters was, the last day or two was reporting, they're estimating that the numbers aren't in for April yet, so everybody's, trying to pick the right number. Reuters is usually a pretty good place to go. They predicted that we're at about 16% currently, and that might fluctuate a little bit upward towards once we get to the end of the month. So if I look at that and I compare that 78.5% to that 16, that would mean that Monco would be around 12.5% of unemployment. Then if I look at our population as I go down here, which is kind of interesting, the breaks of our population, number one, we have about 50,000 residents or so in our district. 0 to 17 is, these are the percentages of all the age brackets. And if you look at the working age, which again, this is rough stuff here, but if I look at the working age, it's about 62% of the total. So that would mean our working age residents it's about 30,600. And when I look at what unemployment rate was prior to the current crisis that we're in of 3.2, that would mean that about 980 people in our district were already unemployed. So at the 12.6%, which I had stated up here, if I look at the 12.6%, the total unemployment currently would be approximately 3,850, which would mean the difference between these two numbers, who was already unemployed prior to the crisis versus the newlies, would mean that we've increased our unemployment by about 2,864. Again, they're rough guesses, but I'm trying to get, using the best data that I can find, the most accurate, to extrapolate some stuff out. Again, too, is another impact here that I was thinking about after preparing this was, or looking at this, was in this bracket here, we're saying 18 to 24. I'm including that in working age. In our district, what is the percentage of graduates from Springford that that go to the next level of college or whatever it might be, that would not be considered part of the working force? So that would probably reduce that number, thereby reduce this number. Maybe if it's 75%, then this number here would go down by about 200. So those are just trying to get a rough idea of what it looks like from an unemployment impact of where we're at. Any feedback on that?
Good work, Jim.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Jim, for all of that. It was very informative.
This is crazy, but this is the kind of stuff that I like doing, all this economic stuff. It's interesting, and just to see where this is going. And as the assumptions, as more data comes out, we can refine our assumptions and look at it and see how it adjust those numbers to see what those impacts really are.
Jim, your mic wasn't muted when you said you enjoy this stuff.
Oh.
Doing all this analysis. No, I mean, thank you for the detail that you're going, and as the board recalls over the weeks, he's also showed the detail and assumptions that go into figuring out other things like earned income tax and real estate transfer tax and everything else. I mean, it's not just done off the cuff. There's a lot of data mining that he's doing and comparing and looking at historical information as well as, trying to stay as current as possible as the numbers will be being published. So we're definitely trying to stay on top of, as best we can, understanding the complete impacts on the entire district. I did also reach out, out of curiosity. I just reached out to one of the township managers in one of our townships. I don't want to get specific, but I was just talking with them, asking them what are they doing, how are they going through deciding on their what their impacts are looking at, and pleasantly that we were right on target with their they're thinking the same way as far as looking at loss of revenues related to declining interest income because the interest rates have dropped. Looking at what they know or what they're projecting as far as going off of the unemployment numbers as well, or what's being advertised, and what how their earned income tax is going to be impacted. So we're all kind of going down the same road, looking at the impact of what this pandemic, and unfortunately, Jim has to do it on a grander scale because we make up 4 municipalities, and we're at 170 million plus budget. So this kind of detail, and I know you have a lot of data behind this, but this kind of detail is extremely important, that we know exactly what we're seeing.
I have two questions related to this. I know you said that you'll continue to gather data, Jim, on the unemployment. Do these numbers, as you've found them in the data, does this include people that have reduced incomes? Because I know a number of people that are not necessarily collecting unemployment, but have taken a reduction in their pay.
No, this would be strict unemployment data. So if people are filing claims to the unemployment desk, this is the data that gets reported out. Those reports typically come out, Bloomberg does a great one every month, but those are monthly reports, and they're usually lagging probably 2 to 3 weeks after the end of a month. March would have been too soon because a full impact hadn't really happened at that point. We'll get some good stuff going into, probably towards the mid to latter part of May, at least preliminaries on how, that impact has been, not just for unemployment, but also for, yes, reduction in pay, and also for, that would be the underemployment number.
Mm-hmm. Underemployment.
And then also they try to do estimates on folks on the sidelines too, which I would argue this time around, considering it's so fresh, that number is probably very low, because people's unemployment benefits have not kicked out yet. They're really just getting started.
It's very true.
Jim, this is Diane Sullivan. I wanted to ask, when you talked about reduced pay, does that come from regardless of reason, like for people whose hours have been cut way back to like 16 a week instead of 40 a week? I take it that would be reflected in the reduced pay for that category as well.
Yes, back to, exactly what Colleen was pointing out was that would be considered part of the underemployment number, which has not come out yet.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And then also, Tom, when you said you spoke with a local township employee, did they indicate what they're doing? I know that they're in similar circumstances, as you said. Did they indicate what they're doing at all to mediate the situation?
They're basically going through all the same steps we are. They're looking at every line, all the major buckets, the line items, potentially hiring freezes. I mean, they're doing everything that, looking at everything that the same, and their goal is they're trying to get to zero, as close to zero as possible.
I think we just got to be careful. We keep saying zero, and that sounds great, but I think it's important that the people know with zero comes some pain. So we will continue to work toward getting the best, the best overall evaluation we can. But I think if we keep saying zero, that's going to lead people to believe that.
I don't disagree, but that's why I keep saying zero, get to as close to zero as possible. And as possible is a key word.
Understood.
Hey, any further discussion? Okay, with that, then we will move on to board and committee reports. We have our students, Jules and Ishika. Do you have a student rep report for this month?
Yes, we do have one.
Okay, we welcome that, please.
Should we just read it off?
Yep, go ahead, you can start.
So what happened is our April report. On March 12th, we visited Limerick Elementary. Mr. Hughes showed us around and informed us about their Wall of Fame, where basically teachers get to elect students who were kind, respectful, and follow the basic, what we want in like the stars of Spring Forward. And they put them up on a wall where they get to talk about what their hopes and dreams are and why they were elected. Senior Decision Day pictures were due yesterday, which was April 26th. Online learning started March 30th. Our spring musical happened, which was 42nd Street, which was absolutely wonderful if anyone got to see it. End of quarter 3 and then the start of quarter 4.
All right, so what's going to happen? Senior Decision Day is May 1st. That is still the National Decision Day, but make sure you check with each individual college or university because some of them have pushed it back to June 1st. Individual graduation ceremonies will start on May 6th, 26th. And then that graduation will air online June 12th at 7 p.m. So make sure you are continuing to check the updates from Dr. Nugent because that's where all of the information will be coming from. Last online day for our seniors is going to be May 22nd. No final exams except check with your dual enrollment classes because that may differ. AP exams are still happening. Dates have been changed, so make sure you are following up with College Board and continuing to check that. And that is it. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy.
Jules and Ishka, one of the things that I kind of tossed around is that, you know, the administration is doing a really good job doing the best they can to do some type of graduation, virtual graduation, and we're doing a virtual signing day and all that. But I also hear, you know, what other school districts are doing, and of course everything's dependent on, you know, what happens each week because no one actually knows what's going to happen. But do you guys have a good sense? Because one of the things that I think we should do is survey the students. But do you guys have a good sense on as far as what they would like as far as an on-field or in-person graduation at some point, a prom, a picnic, something?
Yes. So I think a survey would be great to send out to the students since obviously it's affecting them. But from what I've heard, I have heard very good things about everything. So thank you to all the administration for everything you're doing, online learning, all that stuff. As for prom and graduation, I think that, like you said, it's very hard to tell at this point, but the survey I feel like will be the best way to tell what all the students are feeling. And since there's so many of us, I, like me personally, can't obviously get an opinion for everyone of what they're thinking. And I think if we have data and numbers to see what they would like to do, I think that would be the best thing. But I know a lot of the seniors especially are appreciating that Springport is trying their best with graduation and all that stuff. So
I agree.
I'm sorry, Ishka, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I said I agree with Jules.
Well, I mean, I think that we should at least not this. I mean, we can preface with that. That doesn't necessarily going to do everything that's suggested, but I think that we should be engaging the students to just kind of get a feel, because other districts are doing it, and I think that we should at least put some markers in the sand out there. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I don't know how the administration feels. Just my point of view, but I think it's something that we should be doing.
yeah, and I know Dr. Nugent, he's been working with the class officers, the senior class officers, very, like, a lot, and they have obviously been a huge help to him, and they are trying to do obviously the best that they can as well to help him come up with ideas that would still be safe, that the seniors can do to still recognize all these accomplishments.
Well, I would agree too that I think, yeah, Dr. Nugent had said in his videos that he was basically, collaborating, bringing the senior class officers in, and I think that that's really important. I think that the plan, if it can be executed, is great, and the ceremony later in the summer to bring everybody together is great, and I think we also, we need to remember that you guys are making history, and I'm always about putting a positive spin on everything. You'll never, ever be forgotten. You are making history. You're a class that can survive. You have a strength beyond anything we've seen before, and it's important for us to recognize that. If it is somehow comforting, maybe, I don't know if that's the right word, but where people want to voice their opinions and the survey is available to do that, and not to create chaos around what the great job that administration has done, but to add some flavor to it in some way, then I think we can recognize that. And what we want to do the most is, we're all so disappointed that it's not working out to be the year that the graduation and the prom and everything else that is almost a rite of passage, but it's different. And for that, you'll be remembered, and for your achievements and for your accomplishments, and most importantly, I think, for your strength. So I'm certainly not opposed to a survey. It's almost, we're talking about a town hall for the budget because we want to engage the community. If we put a survey out to engage more of the senior class, it's pretty much along those same lines. Hey, recognize that we appreciate all of the efforts of the administration, but we also want to include as many people in the decision-making process as possible. That's what I would say.
I think we could put a 4 or 5 question survey together and get it out to the seniors.
Yeah, the only thing I would suggest is really thinking about timing of it. If we're talking about kind of getting ideas together for doing a face-to-face type of activity, we don't know if that will even be possible. So I don't want to necessarily set false expectations. And from a timing perspective, it may be something that we want to do a little closer to, once we kind of start seeing that, maybe we'll be able to have a larger group activity in August, then maybe we send out a survey, because we don't know. Students may be gone. They may, have left for the military, or they may have left for college, or they may be doing a summer session, or they may not be local. So, I just throw that out as a consideration. If we're looking for ideas of additional virtual activities that could be done for the class, I think from a timing perspective, now is a great time to start doing that. So it's just the way in which it's framed, and the information, that making sure that we're really considering what information is relevant at the time.
All the other districts around us are doing it. They're picking dates in July and August, and they're saying it's all dependent on what, and of course, when the time gets closer, we're going to have to ask again. But I think that we need to, we're very big on trying to engage the community and the students and all that. And so when we have an opportunity to do that, we should do it. That's all. That's my last point.
I would just like to acknowledge, Mr. DeBello. It's the first time in my tenure on this board that you've had a really good idea. So that was a joke attempted, but as a very proud father of a senior, and I know Mr. Jackson and I share in this sort of, pain and suffering with this class. I think it's a must-have to get senior voice around how can we celebrate them. I recognize that it's almost like scheduling a wedding. You're not going to make it for everyone. Now that things have been disrupted, I think it's around how can we be creative to celebrate this great group of graduates. So I really thank you for bringing this up, and I suggest that Dr. Gooden, if you could get this ball in motion to see about the potential ideas as quickly as possible. I just really appreciate the suggestion and the thought behind it.
Very good.
Okay, let's move it.
Moving on, we already had the, well, thank you, Jules and Ishka, for your reports. And we already did have the Finance Committee report from Mr. DeBello in the beginning regarding the Western Center. We had a very brief JOC meeting via Zoom, and we took care of business. There really is no further report there. PSBA, Dave, do you have anything to report there?
I mean, rather than just sort of acknowledge no report, I would just like to comment that PSBA has done a really good job at communicating updates as all of this has been progressing. I would like to just take this opportunity to say that I did not find anything that was not reported on locally here. So I'd like to give great thanks to our administration. I have forwarded along throughout the past month when a particular piece of information was provided that I thought maybe administration, just to make sure they could see it. But our district leadership has done a great job at informing us. Under normal circumstances, this would be an opportunity for me to sort of provide some visibility into the workings around the state, but we are all tied into the workings around the state right now. So with that, that would conclude the comments I'd like to make around that.
There is one I wanted to add to that. Earlier in the year, I think Mr. Schaefer, I had asked about, and Dr. Gooden, I had asked about the presentations for the fall when PSBA would be taking those applications. And my understanding from Ms. Fern and from an email from PSBA is that they are not planning to hold the conference in October. So our thoughts or designs on potentially having a presentation at the October PSBA conference is unfortunately going to have to go on hold. But it is maybe noteworthy to say. I think
so. It's still sort of. I think that's still in motion. I believe the opportunity to still present. It's what they're classifying as a virtual experience, which I don't. That's a foggy, any sort of conference that now has historically maintained sort of some level of collaboration and face-to-face is to become a virtual experience. I'm just not quite sure, but so just a comment on the end of that, I wouldn't put that one completely to bed yet.
what is that window for the application process if the district wanted to present something virtually? Dave, are you talking? Schaefer, I can't hear you. I'm sorry. Are you muted?
All right. There's a rule here in the House that anytime I speak for 30 seconds, I immediately get muted. I said, just give me a moment. I'll try to find it in my notes and
okay.
Bring it back.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions regarding PSBA?
The only other comment on that, just to remind board members that virtual advocacy day. So advocacy day and the day on the Hill has been rescheduled to May 11th. So folks can sign up and then you'll be linked in to meet with your legislators. So if it's something anybody's interested in, that has been scheduled.
And then legislative, Christina, that's you.
Yeah, so there really, as everybody knows, the focus has primarily been on COVID responses. A lot that the House actually was meeting this late afternoon. I think they resumed around 4 o'clock. And I finally turned them off around 6:30. I had listened enough, I think. But I would say probably the only thing, we continually get great updates from representatives, and we've been really plugged into what's happening. I know Mr. Fink and Dr. Gooden receive updates regularly as well. I think the only thing I just want to continue to highlight is House Bill 1776, which is the homeowner protection. So two bills had been introduced over the weekend, one being House Bill 1776, and the idea is to freeze all property taxes. It was in state government, and it did make its way out of committee today, and it was also had its first consideration on the House floor today. So just as a heads up, that would force school districts into a 0% tax increase. So we wouldn't really have the opportunity to have these conversations and get the input from the community in terms of where do we make the cuts. We would have to make broad cuts across the board. So just keep an eye on that. That's likely to move fairly quickly, one way or the other. Whether it gets out of the House and over the Senate or not, I don't know. But at this point, there is some definite push for forcing districts. It's very difficult because that will hurt, where our budget is, a little over 80% is local taxes. We will not be able to see any increase there, whereas other districts may have 80+% that they receive from the state. And so as that money continues to flow through the funding formula, they may be okay, but we would certainly be hurt if we had to freeze everything. That's where we would really need to reevaluate the elimination of all the extracurriculars that we so desperately did not want to do. So just keep that in mind, keep an eye on it. If you have an opportunity to reach out to your legislators, please do so.
I had a question about that. If it's just freezing the property taxes, it has no nothing in there about freezing budgets, so that nothing, anything that you would plan on increasing or that normally would increase, that wouldn't happen either, or is it just property taxes and you're on your own as far as how you make it up?
Correct. So it would just be freezing the property taxes, which means at this point where we've kind of gone through this whole process where we were at, 4.36%, then 4.33. Now we're down to a 3%, 3.2% tax increase. We would have to get that 3.2% to zero.
Okay.
With no additional support coming anywhere, there would be no relief anywhere, and continuing challenges that Mr. Fink has shared with us with regards to investment income and the reductions in those areas as well due to interest rate reductions. So
it would require us to make serious cuts.
Right.
In the district.
So again, I urge, to the extent anybody can, I urge you to reach out to your representatives. We're doing everything we can to get as close to zero. We're very mindful of the impacts on our community as well as the impacts on our students. And I think as a board, and certainly our administration has been doing a yeoman's job in really working to get us there. But that's something that, hopefully we will be able to retain responsibility for, as opposed to being told and being forced to cut deep and hard, and then have, to Mr. DeBello's point, over the last few months that he's been sharing with us, the more we, the deeper we cut now, the harder it is going to be to get back. So, we want to try to preserve as much of our educational and extracurricular programs for our students. And
Okay.
any questions?
Okay. MCIU, Mr. DeBello?
Just real quick, the IU, we met like everything else virtually. So the main part of the meeting was just focused on doing the business at hand. So we just kind of went through the agenda and approved revenues and expenses that are coming and going into the district. But the majority of my time, being on the executive committee and then participating on the interviewing of the replacement of the executive director has continued. We've had some really good interviews. We had some candidates. We've narrowed it down. We're in the process of hopefully moving in a direction of finding and offering out to what we would believe is to be the next director of the Montgomery County IU. Dr. George, as the board recalls, is moving on from the IU, and he's accepted a position where he's going to be, I don't know the best way to explain it, almost like a mentor to all of the IUs within the state. So we have a great relationship there, and so that we look forward to him and the position he's going into. And the last thing is that we are still managing the Harrisburg, overseeing the Harrisburg School District, but we'll be in the process in the next few months of hopefully giving that back to the local school board with minimal oversight. That's my report.
Any questions? Okay, superintendent report, Dr. Gooden.
Thank you, Colleen. This is a shout out to the Springford Food Service team, which is up to this date prepared and distributed 19,456 meals since the state mandated shutdown. Each day, Monday through Friday, any child under the age of 18 in our district can pick up a breakfast and a lunch from one of 3 schools: Royersford Elementary, Spring City Elementary, and the Flex Building. Meals include milk, fruit, juice, and a vegetable in a main dish. Just this past week, we introduced reheatable meals, including spaghetti meatballs and chicken stir fry. I'd like to send out a very special thanks to Jill Chrisman, Lisa Davis, Dawn DeChant, Raylene Jeffers, Don Pfeiffer, and Scott Orsini for their endless dedication to our students and community for continuing to prepare thousands of meals for those in need. That's the end of my report.
Okay, any questions for Dr. Gooden? All right, thank you for doing all of that and for making sure that that is happening and the food is getting out. It's important. Let us now go to solicitor's report. Mr. Fitzgerald.
There's no additional report this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Colleen, just to follow up on, I said, I would do some research on them. First of all, did you tie lettuce into the food portion when you were transitioning over to the solicitor's report, or was that just an accidental pun? So I thought
Lettuce?
that was good.
No.
You got to, it's a slow jog with
No.
you. You got to keep up.
You are on fire tonight, Dave. I'll
Dave,
tell you
yeah,
what.
wow.
You guys don't know, but today's a shower day, so All right.
No, we don't know. We're okay with that. So,
EMI.
Thank
yeah.
you. There will be a virtual and combined conference in the fall with PASA and PSBA, and the call for presentations has not been published yet, so I will get back.
Okay. All right. So let's just keep an eye on that, and then we can make that decision later if we want to submit an application. I know that when Linda and Tom and I were out there last year, we knew that Springford could go out and present and really do a great job on a number of different topics. So we'll see if that's something we want to do. I know we have more pressing issues to deal with right now, but we can keep that in mind. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of our meeting, and that would be where we, do I have approval? We have minutes A. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Any opposed? Okay, so those pass. Personnel A through D. And there was a little bit of a change. I'll note that on C, the dates and times were changed regarding ESY back to the original. I believe, Mr. Rizzo, you commented on those in the board memo, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and there was also some language added by Mr. Fitzgerald in the last sentence that it's all contingent on the opening of school, correct? I can't hear him. Yes.
That is correct. We because ESY is extended school year, for example, is still in doubt as whether it's going to be virtual or brick and mortar. We put some contingencies into some of these appointments.
Okay, and that is for C and D. You did that, correct? Yes. Okay, so personnel A through D. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Finance A through E.
Separate E.
A through D. We'll take A through D. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, E. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Do you have any questions or comments on E? I'll comment again, this is to only put this information out and specifically not to approve the budget the way it is now. All in favor, say aye.
And Colleen?
Yes,
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead.
you can't hear him.
Tom, turn on your mic.
Sorry, the stupid thing. It's going to be, a lot of questions are going to come up later. I would suspect that people are going to ask, how's it going to be published? And it gets published, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's published as a PDF. Jim?
The required publishing of it is on PDE's Form 2028,
Okay.
which is a PDF, yes.
Right, okay, thank you.
Clinton, did you have something that you wanted to add to that?
No, it's fine.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Programming and curriculum, A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? I will comment that B, that had been there last week, was removed because, again, it was related to ESY. Correct, Mr. Rizzo? Yes. Okay.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Conferences and workshops, A. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, passes also. Other business, A and B. And B was corrected to say those policies are on for approval, not for a second read tonight, but they are on for approval.
So move.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes for those. Informational item A. Is there a motion?
What?
What's
It's
informational?
informational,
Yeah, it's informational.
so there's no vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay. Okay, board comment?
I just wanted to once again raise a question about the status or what we're thinking of as a board with regards to the real estate and rental rebate for the population that we can offer that to. I know it's something we talked about in the finance committee this month. We talked about it in the board work session. We talked about it in the second finance committee meeting. So I'm just trying to get an idea of where that is and where we're going with that.
I thought
I guess for those who don't know what it is, the state does have a real estate and rental rebate. And for those who qualify, my proposal is that we extend that to those who qualify at the state level and offer some percentage of the state rebate. So state rebate runs between $250 and $650 per, for each household. So I would, recommend that we evaluate selecting a percentage somewhere around the 30 to 40% of that we would then offer a rebate for those who meet the requirements set forth by the state. So that's where that is, that the populations that fall within that would be those over the age of 65 It would be widows and widowers over the age of 50, and it would also be disabled individuals over the age of 18 who meet certain thresholds from an income perspective.
Mr. Fitzgerald, could you speak to that last meeting? I'd asked that one of my concerns was how quick could we implement this? And you
Correct.
go back and get some information on that?
Well, I think I did mention at the last meeting that this could be implemented fairly quickly. The structure for it, frankly, is already in place in that a neighboring district has done it. We assisted them with it, and I think that information can be helpful to put that in place fairly quickly for you. What I would suggest is I can, as I've shared the process through the resolution with Mr. Fink's office. I think what will need to occur is sometime between now and whenever the board would actually consider approving it is having it reviewed at the committee level to make sure that this is something that would be supported from, and probably finance is where it would go, and the mechanics of it, and then bring it forward to the full board. I would also like to either share through electronic communication with this group or through an executive session, just some of the legal mechanics of it as well, which I just think need to be addressed before you would act on it fully.
Okay, thank you.
I've seen this in action before in other school boards, and Christina, I'm supportive in the board taking a further look on this and going further with that process.
So then I guess, could we add that as an agenda item, Mr. Fink, for our next finance committee meeting?
Yeah, certainly.
Thank you.
Then could we also further be prepared to speak about it during the town hall and the impacts that it may or may not have on our budget?
Well, as we dive into it further at the finance committee, like everything else, I'm fine. I'm supportive of it. I think, it's something that we can do, but from a board perspective, that if and how and when we do this, it comes with a cost that, we have to roll in, because if it's just like the homestead tax, we're losing that from the state, so we have to make it up. So it's the same thing. If we give rebates out, we have to make it up somewhere else. So, but I'm fine. I think we should do it. I hope we could possibly pull it off this year.
And if anybody on the board wants any additional information, I have all the documentation, so I can send it or resend it if you don't have it.
I would appreciate it.
Who said that?
Wendy.
Wendy, thank you. I'm like, wait.
Okay, any other board comment? Okay, public to be heard.
Mark, correct me if I'm wrong. There were 3 questions in the Q&A section at the bottom, and our understanding is that to comply with sunshine laws, they must raise their hand and be identified where they live. So we can answer those questions.
I believe we've utilized the process of the hand raising through the Zoom platform. So that's what we would continue to use. The Q&As, they don't need to be answered anyway, because public comment is not a Q&A session anyway. So those individuals, should they desire, they would have to raise hands and advise who they are.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we have 2 hands raised. We'll start off with Megan Goldstein. Megan, your mic is live.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Megan Goldstein, Goldstein, 33 Ashley Drive. I just wanted to agree with somebody that was up there that if a survey and stuff does go out for the seniors regarding prom and graduation, it has to be done very fast. At first I was like, well, I thought that everybody was doing so much to try to get it done, but just seeing all the other school districts roll in with options that are extending all the way into Thanksgiving break of the next Thanksgiving coming up, I just think that I see my daughter, senior, and her friends all really wanting to walk across that stage. And I'm seeing a lot of multiple dates and, that could possibly be. So it's just my feeling that these kids, I'm not worried about them setting up for another disappointment. They have already been through so much. I really am in the camp as a lot of parents that I've been talking to is, let's just try, but it needs to be done fast. These other schools are already on it. They have picked date after date. If we're doing nothing or doing all the virtual stuff, which is great, I want to do that too. We've got to know soon, because that way people will stay away from maybe planning something. People are getting too cooped up, so we need to be on it. So I hope everybody can work fast, and if it's getting a survey out, get that out. But I know a lot of parents and kids out there are pushing for that. They want to walk across the stage and maybe have some kind of prom. They all have their dresses. But thank you for your time and everything that you're doing.
Hey, Colleen, I think we should recognize also that there's roughly about 150 participants on the call this evening as well, or on the video, not call, but participate in the video meeting.
Actually, it was over 200 at some point.
It was.
Well, you got to subtract off panelists.
145.
Oh, they're listed separately.
Yeah.
All right, our next hand raised is Joy Crowell. I apologize if I said your name wrong. Your mic is live.
Joy, can I just ask too,
Yes.
any attendees that come on, Ms. Fern has asked that you also give your city.
Yes.
So I know Megan Goldstein just commented she is Schwenksville, and if Ms. Crowell, if you could also include that in your address, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so it's Joy Crowell, Crowle, 5 Linden Way, Collegeville, PA, 19426. And I would just like to thank again Springford for when we're in the good times, the bad, and once again, the crazy. But I'd like to thank Mr. DeBella for bringing up the survey. And I'd also like to, I agree with Megan Goldstein, all these other districts, we've got Southerton, Pottsgrove, PV, ONJ, all these other school districts have dates on the books. These kids have already been disappointed. As soon as they come into the Springford School District in kindergarten, all we talk about with them is graduation, getting to the end, putting your best foot forward. And I would like to also recognize and say congratulations on Springford for the great job of getting into the top, I believe, 100 schools in PA. And the class of 2020, let's give them a huge shout out. They are a huge part of getting us into that top 100. These kids deserve to have a walk-in graduation on the field with their class, walk down the field, move their tassels, go up, get their diploma, and throw their caps up together as a class of 2020. If the state is open and it's safe, let's make this happen for them. I'd be more than happy to help in any way possible. I know other parents would as well, along with the prom in the gym, so we don't have to get a venue or spend any money. Also, I know Dr. Nugent spoke about, and this would all be in addition to what they're doing in May. I think that's great. But also, Dr. Nugent has talked about a celebratory event if and when the state can open with the students, the parents, and the teachers. I would just say, if you're planning that for the students, the teachers, and the parents, why could you not make an actual graduation a couple hours earlier before the barbecue? I'd be more than happy to set up 657 chairs. If they're there, I'll set them up. If everybody needs to bring a chair, bring a beach chair. These kids just want to walk down that field together, throw their hats up, and I know everybody says, yeah, 2020, you'll never be forgotten, quarantine. But to those kids, they've been looking forward to this from kindergarten. Let's make it happen. The other school districts are doing it. We can do it too. Let's show everybody that Springford's just as great.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I know we were a little pressed on time there, but I do appreciate the comments. Isabel, I think is next, Bob. Oops, sorry.
Isabel Crowell, you're live. You're muted.
Hi, I'm unmuted, sorry.
Isabel Crow, 5 Linden Way, Collegeville, PA. I just wanted to say that I'm a senior, and I just wanted to put my voice out there so that, and just like say that we really appreciate all that you guys have been doing. And I just wanted to show that we do have a voice and we all really care about graduation. I've talked to so many seniors and all of my friends, and we all really want a real graduation ceremony. And I appreciate you guys putting together the graduation in May and June. And I love the idea that you have put together while we are still in quarantine. However, it will be nice that in addition to that, we had a real graduation ceremony and even a prom if it's possible. I heard that there will also be a senior picnic if possible. And all I wanted to ask was that if we are allowed to have our entire grade together for a picnic, that we also have a traditional graduation. I've also seen other schools set graduation dates and prom dates for late in the summer in case the state is open. And I know that if other schools are doing those things and they're posting pictures everywhere of them, you know, at prom in the summer or graduation, and we don't have anything planned, then I know that we'll all be upset. And I just think it would be a good idea to have a plan in place for all of us. And we also, I just want to say again that I really appreciate everything you guys have been doing for us.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I think there's 2 more I see, Bob.
2 more. Kim Shemp, you are live. You are muted. Now you're good.
Okay, thank you. My name is Kim Shemp. I live at 306 Township Line Road in Schwenksville. Okay, I just wanted to say that I definitely think what Mr. DeBello recommended today about the survey was excellent idea. However, I think we probably needed to do that a couple weeks ago because, as everybody's saying, we're getting pressed for dates and times. So I agree with the fact of Megan and Joy saying that we need to set a date sometime in August, hopefully, if we're possible, able to be together, that we get something on the books so that people can plan vacations and college and everything around that date. What I'm finding with my student is that these kids are in a state of limbo. They've gone through kindergarten through 13 years of school and all of a sudden stopped in the middle of their 13th year of school, and they're in a state of limbo. And what they really need is closure, and that closure is graduation. Mentally, in order for them to move on to their next phase of life, which is college, these kids need closure and a graduation. They need to walk down that aisle on the field just with all their other students, and like Joy said, throw their hats up in the air and celebrate. I think even if we had to limit the amount of guests, whatever we had to do, I think we should do as much as possible to get these kids a graduation. I think mentally, and for them to successfully transition into college, that's what they really truly need, is a graduation. We somehow have to get a date scheduled so that we can get all this together. And like Joy said, all the parents would be more than willing to help out. I will also mention that the Air Force Academy just graduated 967 cadets in this time of quarantine. Now, families were not included, but was in April. So hopefully by August, families would be included, and we could, even if we had to limit the amount of guests, get these kids out onto that field and let them graduate the way they should. And I appreciate everything you've done too. I think what you have set up for May and June is fabulous. But I think instead of a senior celebration, I think the kids really would prefer graduation rather than that. I think they want to be with their friends and walk down that football field. So we will do whatever we can as parents to help you guys out, and we appreciate everything that you have done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We've got Jen.
Hi, Jen Lancenese, 104 Persimmon Drive, Collegeville, Pennsylvania. I'll keep it really, really short. I just agree with what Joy had to say. I'd love to see the kids get the chance to have a real graduation, and I'm willing to help out in any way I can. And thanks for all that you're doing. Really appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you.
There's one more.
Thank you. Okay.
It's Charles. Charles, you're up, sir.
Hi, actually, it's Rachel Ladd, 19 Park Circle, Pottstown. I have a question on the opposite end of the spectrum. I have young kids, and I'm just wondering, I saw an email come out today about the fourth marking period not really being graded, and I'm wondering how they'll be evaluated to go to the next grade level.
I think that's for Dr. Gooden.
Dave?
Yes, I'm gonna have Dr. Murray chime in on that because I'm not aware of what came out today.
So we are, in reference to that, we will, due to COVID, we cannot retain students due to COVID. So we are trying to continue the education as best as possible for students. If there's a question about your child being retained, you likely would have already had conversations. It's really a team approach in helping to decide if a student needs to be retained. So I would encourage you to reach out to your building principal if that's a concern for you. But likely those conversations would have already started in reference to that. So it wouldn't be something new that would start as a result of COVID-19.
So the assumption would be if that conversation hasn't started, that they would be moving on to the next grade level?
Most likely, but for more accurate information, I would start with your child's teacher and with the building principal.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely.
And that is it. No other hands are raised at this time.
Okay, and so that is it for public to be heard.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Well, it looks like there's another hand. Do you want that or?
Yes, there's one more. Shelley, you are live. Shelley, you are muted.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Shelley Bryce at 39 Pin Oaks Drive, Phoenixville, PA, which is actually Oaks. But anyway, I have my oldest kids are twins and they're girls. And, you know, it was very, very emotional when we found out school was canceled. I mean, obviously we were crying and hugging each other, and I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. But like all the other moms have just said that are seniors, we want to see our kids graduate, and we feel so bad for them because they've been robbed of all these experiences that everyone should have. So I just want to, I understand what you're doing, and I'm happy that we are doing, but I mean, I'm hearing about these other schools doing things, like they said, and putting things on dates. But the thing is, have you guys even checked into what other schools are doing? Like, I don't even know. Like, are you just deciding on your own? Like, are you guys seeing like the other possibilities that we could do? Or and then, like I said, I know the dates we can't do right now, but get something on the calendar like they're doing. Anyway, I just wanted to find out if you're checking into other possibilities and if you could do anything possible for these kids because they deserve it. I mean, they worked hard. So thank you very much. Sorry.
I think Dr. Gooden, you're muted, but I'm not sure if you're trying to say something there. I know so much has gone into what Dr. Nugent and the administration and you have been involved in with the planning. And I believe that you did consider what other schools are doing and what you thought would be best for Spring Forward. Do you want to comment any further on that? I do feel bad for her and for all the moms and for all the seniors.
I think, first of all, that everybody would like to have a normal, traditional graduation where everybody's in person. I just don't believe that that's going to happen. I am aware of what other districts have done or what they are proposing or what they're communicating to their families that they want to try to do later in the summer. We felt that we had come up with a plan that was going to meet those needs, considering the current circumstances, along with the senior get-together. So yes, in answer to the question, we are aware of what other districts have proposed to do, and that was in our consideration as well.
I think so, and I think that what Dr. Arkush had said fairly recently also was that they're not letting us anything there's a 0% chance that we can have anything throughout the summer. Now, I know,
That's
Mr.
not
DeBello, you
true.
questioned
no,
that.
that's not what she said.
That's what she said.
She said
first
no
off,
graduation ceremonies.
in the spring.
In June, yeah.
In springtime.
There was also going to be, I think, Mr. DeBello, you had raised the question, that is that even something that she can say? Is
Legally.
Mr. Fitzgerald, can you weigh in on that?
Sure. I had shared a communication with Dr. Gooden about that on Friday, and certainly that can be forwarded to the board. She did not, she can't act unilaterally based on our analysis. She spoke at a press conference. Now, to the extent that the Board of Commissioners desires to enter into some sort of restrictive practice for the school districts, we believe they likely could, but to date that has not occurred yet at the county level. And our sense generally is that whatever is going to be occurring at the county level is going to be dictated by what the State Department of Health is saying we can do, and the Secretary of Health.
Okay. Okay.
Two more hands now.
I think that Ms. Krell had already spoken, so, and it really was beyond the 3 minutes. So I think we should let the next person speak first. Is that fair, Mr. Fitzgerald?
Well, I think you had opened it up for that one well, I think we now need to take whoever's outstanding, but if somebody's already spoken, they can't speak again.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So then Ms. Snyder, you're up. You're muted, miss.
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I also have a senior, but I guess I'm going to.
Can you give us your name?
I'm sorry, my
and
name is,
address?
sorry. My name is Susie Snyder, 124 Scarlet Oak Drive, Phoenixville. And I just wanted to say, I guess I take a different standpoint where I also have a senior. My son is a senior. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate what Dr. Nugent and Dr. Gooden, what they're doing for our seniors. I really, think being able to walk across the stage and what they're planning and for a family to be able to come and get pictures. I think it's a great opportunity for the kids, for the family, and it really does stink. I agree that we can't have a normal graduation, but I definitely agree that if you gave us a date, you couldn't stick to it, and that would be just another disappointment. And our kids have already been through so much disappointment already that, I just want to say thank you. I really think it's a great idea. Sorry, I'm a little nervous, but I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Nugent and Dr. Gooden, that I really think it's a great idea. My son is happy with that idea. He gets to have his cap and gown. He gets to walk across the stage. We get our pictures, and I just think it's a great idea. It's better than a virtual graduation. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you for saying that, because there certainly has been a lot of effort. Okay.
We have Joseph Salazzo.
I think he wanted to speak in the beginning of the meeting too. Okay.
Correct. Joseph, you're up. You're muted.
Thank you. Joseph Salazzo, 44 Woodley Drive, Royersford, Pennsylvania. We're parents of grade school children here, and our concern is the displacement that our kids have in terms of with not having live interactions with their teachers. Is there any thought to how we can improve that if this were to go into the fall? The asynchronous learning, it feels almost like the kids are just completing tasks and not actually learning anything. They do their attendance questions, they do the worksheets that are assigned. We got notes about office hours today, and that's, potentially 5 minutes interacting with during the week. Is there any thought that if this has to go into the fall for any reason, how do we get more interactions with the teachers for the students?
Well, certainly.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Gooden. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, certainly if this, first of all, we are a brick and mortar school. We're not a charter school. We're not a cyber charter. And so this is not optimal. It is the best plan that we could put together. And we're hoping that this does not go into the fall. But if it does, and we are still on this kind of a learning platform, I'm sure that given the time, the improvements will come into play. I don't ever see us doing synchronous learning though, on an online format. I do see us continuing to be asynchronous, probably with more expanded, and I don't want to speak as far as what plans are for this fall, and that would have to be determined as we go further into the summer. But at this point right now, we're trying to do as best we can as far as establishing classrooms, office hours, so that teachers can meet with students. But I do not see us moving into a synchronous platform anytime soon. Dr. Murray, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you touched on everything important, but as you had mentioned in your comment as well, we did just roll out a new platform, Microsoft Teams, which is allowing us more of the opportunity to provide more of that interaction that you had mentioned. Our IT department did a fantastic job vetting a lot of the different software that was available. So we just started this week with that portion. So I'm hoping moving forward, you will start to see and feel some more of that teacher interaction, whether it be office hours or through teacher-led instruction using Microsoft Teams. So hopefully that will be one of the pieces that will address your immediate concerns.
Well, I think he raises a good point, and I think that it's probably better than a 50% probability that something is going to be different come September. So I think that we're going to have to take the summer, and we're going to have to really think long and hard and evaluate what we've done, what worked, what wasn't working, and what could we improve, and how could we get to synchronous, as close to synchronous learning as possible. Because, if we're paying attention to what's going on, and certainly in Montgomery County, we have to believe that there's a strong possibility. And I don't have any insider information. I'm just going based on, current information that's out there. And recently with the governor's color coding of counties, red, green, and yellow, Montgomery County's red, and there's a lot of projections out there as far as when the county potentially will open up, even though that they are opening up a few things, but we have to prepare for what could happen come late August and September.
And I agree with that, Mr. DeBella. I agree wholeheartedly. We'll be planning all summer to make sure that if that is the event, or if that is the case, that we are continuing in an online learning environment. We certainly will use the experience that we've had this spring to improve what's happening at the, if that's the case in the fall. I'm just not sure about synchronous learning. Even established cyber charters don't use synchronous learning. It is fraught with problems and issues. I just don't see us going there. It's not that we won't look at it, but I'm not hopeful that that's a direction that we would go.
Well, I didn't say go to synchronous learning. I said get to.
I understand. I heard you.
Okay, because I'm not promoting that we get to synchronous. I agree that would be a huge undertaking, and it comes with a high expense, but we try to get to something as close as we can.
We have one more, Rachel Shemp. Rachel, you are live.
Hi, I'm Rachel Shemp, and I'm from 306 Township Glen Ridge, Schwenksville, PA. And I just want to thank everyone for their efforts in graduation, senior events, and other events. And I would just like to say that my classmates and I have put a ton of work into our schooling, and this counts of homework, projects, quizzes, tests, etc. And we feel as if graduation is a necessary event in which we throw our caps and gowns, take pictures, and all the things that other seniors get to do. It's an event in which we get closure and move on to college and other experiences in life. If this is possible, I think we should do it. And I think that if we were able to have a senior barbecue or an event like that, that we should have a graduation too. Again, I just want to say thank you to everyone and all your effort into putting into this event. So yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and With that, no more comments. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.